Good afternoon, everyone. Hope all is well. So, today we're going to be going live with Murray Clark, all the way from South Africa, Cape Town. He's a real estate agent up in South Africa, and I want to know all about the South African real estate market. So, Murray, we've got you online.
Hey, how you going?
Murray, good. And yourself?
I'm good, thanks.
Good, good. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's a pleasure to have you on board, not just sharing property knowledge for what you do in South Africa, but also to share positivity. And this is what I do every day with all the guests that come on board on this live session. We share knowledge and positive energy. So thank you so much for joining me today, all the way from South Africa. What is the time out there,
No problem.
Murray?
Thanks. It's 12 o'clock at the moment, and it's cold and windy outside, so if the reception's not good, please forgive me.
It's okay. It's perfectly fine. So, Murray, before we start, if you can introduce yourself as to who you are and what you do, and then we can get the conversation going.
No problem. So my name's Murray Clark, and I run a property development company called Neighborgood. Our mission as a company is to reinvent physical spaces and breathe life back into neighborhoods. We create living and working spaces, connected living and workspaces that offer shared economy themes that are designed to try and bring people together. And it's really about bringing good back into neighborhoods. And so for the last 15 years, I've been in property and property development, and from an early age, always loved property and the creative aspect of understanding what the built environment looks like, and have developed a portfolio of both residential and shopping center properties across South Africa. And our objective moving forward is, off the back of everything happening in the real estate market, is to reposition redundant physical real estate that's not relevant anymore, and to create spaces that are a little bit more sustainable for a very connected world. So yeah, that's in summary what we do. I know the UK market fairly well as well, because we've trawled sort of the major cities and towns across the UK with a view to try and position some of the high street.
Okay. I think we've lost Murray there. There might be some technical issues on the internet. We'll wait for him to come back on again. Murray, are you with me?
Yep, there we go. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened.
It's all right, no problem. Murray, before we move forward into discussing more about what you do in terms of the property development market, a question is, did you always think that you wanted to get into property, from a young age, going to school, or even, just watching your parents do build their careers? Did you always think that property is the place where you want to be, or did you have other aspirations in life of doing something else, like becoming a doctor or lawyer or a finance guru or something like that? Or no, property was the game that you wanted to get into always?
My father was a contractor, so I grew up on building sites.
Okay.
So I had exposure, although I didn't really know what it is, from a fairly early age. I only started to appreciate the value of hard assets when I was 18 or 19. But before that, I had been involved in various businesses, under 18 nightclubs to sports clinics to, oh my goodness, quite a few. So it was never something, I fell into it after taking the decision to sell houses when I was at law school, but didn't know from an early age that I was going to be in property, but have loved it ever since.
And then that just grew up into where you are today. What I want to know about is the South African real estate market. Of over the years that you have been in the market, how have you seen the how have you seen the property market grow in front of you as to where it is today?
So I have gone through a couple cycles. I started off in real estate in about 2006, just
Okay,
before the 2008 crash.
absolutely.
So pre 2008, it was very buoyant. Debt wasn't a problem in respect to raising of debt for developments. And so it was much easier to transact, although it was obviously a bubble
Yep,
that came crashing down in 2008. In my experience, 2008 was a reset for a lot of people, possibly how
yep,
2020 is going to be for us all as well.
of course.
And so, yeah, we have high inflation rates in this country, which mean that rental escalations are higher than traditional European and American markets,
Absolutely.
which has pros and cons. Obviously, if you've got paid for asset, the pro is the value of your asset increases in line with your
Of
rental
course.
escalations.
Of
The
course.
cons, obviously, is that we're always trying to hedge our risk. Our rand as a currency is not as strong as the British pound.
Yep.
The property overall, context always for me defines the performance of the property. We have a unique country which is both first and third world, so
Indeed.
the dynamic extends to the demographic which we cater for. I have in my past developed a lot of shopping centres in rural areas because that was where the demand is.
Indeed.
Whereas in the UK it's quite different. But the property market overall has always done well. It's always been the safe bet as an asset class. It ticks over. There's probably less players than in the UK here, although the players are just as strong.
Absolutely.
Residential is not as big as it is over there.
What are
Commercial,
we
industrial,
in
yeah.
terms of in terms of residential returns in South Africa currently? What are we looking at as rental returns? Where's the market at right now? I mean, for example, London right now, central London, for example, if you've got around 3 to 3.5% net in your bank account, that's an amazing rental return. And if you went to,
So
for example, somewhere like Manchester or Liverpool, you would get 8 to 10% net, depending on where you buy. So in light of that, are the rental returns sort of the same out there, or they're higher in the market?
I think it's primarily area specific. I'm amazed to hear that your rental returns are as high as that in Liverpool and Manchester. But
Yep.
I would say in sort of more established markets, residential returns of 6 to 8% would be appropriate.
Wow.
I won't do a deal unless we're generating 11%. Just simply because I'm a property player, so
Yep.
I'm wanting to create value from the get-go, and
Of
obviously the
course.
higher your yield is, the yield translates to net asset value. So yeah, I think for the sort of normal market, anything from sort of 5 to 8%. But for us sort of property people who are doing this for a living, we're always
Yep.
trying to push the boundaries and create as much value as possible.
And
And I'll look at
property developers out here sort of work with the figure in mind that they want to at least achieve 30% on whatever they develop. Is that the case with yourself as well? When you go out and develop, are you looking at that 30% return capital appreciation on your development that you're doing?
I think 30% is a great number if you can achieve it. We probably look at between 20 and 25,
Okay.
but we'll probably get higher gearing rates. So the banks, depending on the deal, will give us, and I'm not sure what it's like over there. I don't know what the banks will lend you guys, but we'll probably get between 80 and 90% gearing.
It depends over here as well. You get 70%, you get 80%. Sometimes the finance, for the development finance, sometimes the brokers finance the whole deal. So you would get 100% on the development finance, but then you have to sort of pay for the property. Like you could use two brokers in a case where you have a mortgage broker for the property and you have a development finance broker for the development. So for the property, you would get a mortgage at like 70%, 80%. And then maybe for the development, you might get the whole 100%. But then you have to distribute the charges on that property as well, because sometimes the
Yeah.
development finance guys, they want the first charge, and you can't give them the first charge because you've already given the first charge to the bank that's lent to you. So do you have those kind of situations as well in South Africa that, you know,
Yeah.
when it comes to it?
Yeah. We don't have as much of a mature, you know, in respect to your banking, although our banking system is very strong. What I found in both the UK and in the US, obviously you guys use a lot of BRRRR method, where you're buying, rehabbing, refinancing and reselling, or refinancing. Our banks don't really do as much of that. So
Okay.
there's no restructured finance after the redevelopment period, which is unfortunate because ultimately you guys create the value and so you reap the rewards afterwards.
Of course.
Whereas here, you know, if I buy a property for £1 million, unless it's a commercial property that's linked to net income, banks don't really regard residential as much of a commercial transaction as they do the balance of retail, industrial. It's not as mature as the UK market, unfortunately.
Okay. And in terms of bringing it to that maturity, are the banks and the government taking any steps for making it more comfortable for property developers like yourself or anyone new that comes to the country and they want to invest and they want to redevelop the cities and the country around there? Are the banks open to doing that sort of refinancing structure?
Yeah, I mean, so there's banks like Investec, which are also in the UK, that are more private banking centric, which means that there's a lot more of a private feel. But the traditional banks are much of a muchness. I'm sure that's the case over there. You know, the moment you have a balance sheet and you've grown and you've done well, then they will lend you money. But
exactly, it's the same out here. That when you go out and you have a development experience, the banks are like throwing money at you. You know, come on, take this, take that deal. But the hard times faced is your first development deal. You know, it's always the case that no banks will lend you, and then you possibly have to get into a JV with an experienced developer.
Oh my gosh.
So have you also faced that in your first few developments? Did you have that same experience?
I mean, we generally have to bring equity into most deals. We've done a few ourselves, but the transactions that we've done range, I would say, between 2 and 15 million pounds. If I have to look at and they're more mixed use assets. So we generally ring fence everything in special purpose vehicles. We'll bring in equity as required, and as the project sponsor, we'll take anything from 10 to 30%, depending on.
And how much do you pay your equity partners at the end of the deal? What sort of percentage do you pay them?
Generally, they'll just take the lion's share of the equity in the deal. So they'll take a 70% of the deal, or up to 80% of the deal, and they'll get sort of prime interest rate, which in this country is sort of 8.5% to 9% on their money. But the value is, it's crazy, yeah. But the value is in the compounded growth, obviously.
I mean, I'm sure you heard about the interest rates dropping out here too. Before lockdown. So how many units in terms of residential and commercial put together do you sort of go ahead and build a year?
Mate, we are looking at
I mean, if we were to put 2019 into context How many units did you build around? I mean, are you predominantly Cape Town, or you look at Johannesburg and other cities in South Africa?
Yeah, no, I'll do Durban, Joburg, Cape Town, probably about 500 a year, but
Wow.
primarily in greenfields projects. We're looking a lot
Okay.
more brownfields now. Because
Okay.
we developers, ultimately, you have to have scale. So for us, the strategy is to take a view on areas and
Yep.
try and own the node or establish sort of a presence around the node
Yep.
versus looking at sporadic investments here and there. I'd rather take a view on almost like the you and I guys and the Urban Splash guys do in the UK
Yep.
at a regeneration level.
Okay. And in terms of these 500 units that you build, do you have mainly South African nationals buying out there, or do you also get overseas nationals coming in to invest into properties in South Africa for the returns that you are generating? So do you have a
I'd
mix of
say
both
80% SA, 20% offshore.
for foreign
But
nationals?
offshore invest in Cape Town. They don't invest anywhere else. Cape Town's quite European as a city. It's tourism.
Yep,
Everyone knows Cape Town. It's a beautiful city to
absolutely.
live. So it carries a bit more of an attraction to it than Durban and Joburg.
When I was a kid, and the only time that I heard about South Africa is when they played cricket. You
Bro,
know, uh,
Lion King, Lion
uh,
King.
Lion King as well. But it was more. I was more into my cricket at that point, and I think the first time that I watched the South African team, and I turned to my father and I was like, "Is South Africa in Africa? Like I
Oh
cannot
no.
see."
Yeah,
And it was one of those things. But then gradually you sort of understand that
yeah,
it's a multicultural
yeah.
country, city, and it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. I
Man,
mean,
it is
my father was there 2 years ago, and I saw some of the pictures that he'd taken. Wow, it's an amazing city to
nice.
be in.
The quality of living here and the standard of living is amazing. The sunshine is beautiful. The mountain is incredible. The
And
ocean is
and and is
beautiful.
that the reason that a lot of people, like 20% is a good number of foreign investors coming and investing into your country? Is that one of the reasons, because of the good weather, the good the
For sure. Quality
economic
of life.
structure, the quality of life? Is that the reason why a lot of foreign investors come and invest into your country?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the quality of life here is exceptional comparatively to, other areas.
And as a foreign investor, do I get sort of advantages or some perks, for example, to invest into South Africa? Like, sometimes for example, if you invest in Greece or Cyprus, they do that golden visa thing that they
Yeah.
do. So as a foreign investor, if I were to come to South Africa and invest, like, let's say, £500,000, do I get some sort of benefits, advantages of doing that?
Yeah, there are incentive structures in place. They're not as forward thinking as some of those Cyprus related structures. Generally speaking, the trend is for people looking for a European passport, not too many people looking for a South African passport. But but what you do get is an incredible lifestyle and a view over Clifton Beach, and that's better for your soul than the passport that comes with a European entry.
um, so Murray, we spoke about what you do, how you do it. You're into the property development sector at in Cape Town. How has the 2020 real estate market shaped up? I mean, were January, February really good months, and then when sort of lockdown and COVID and everything sort of kicked in really badly, I should say, did you have a knock-on effect on the real estate market around there?
Yeah, I mean, we own shopping centers, so the only tenants that were paying rental were our grocery tenants because they remained open.
Okay.
So we had to do a lot of restructuring at a debt level because obviously if tenants are not paying rent, we can't pay our bonds.
Yep.
So there was a big impact within our portfolio simply because the bulk of it is retail.
Yep.
At a residential level, the numbers also didn't look very good. Collections were under sort of 60% for May. June sort of, yeah. So, I mean, there's been a knock-on effect with employment generally across the country, which has had an impact on people's ability to pay rent.
Yep.
And obviously, globally, unemployment rates have risen to 25%, which is an insane number.
Of course.
So, yeah, it's going to be a big effort from everyone to try and mitigate everything going on, and for entrepreneurs like us to think about problems that can be solved in the process of trying to.
And what measures are you
stimulate.
taking in terms of, you mentioned that you're going through a bit of restructuring within your company and everything. What sort of restructuring methods are you going through?
So the sort of spaces we're creating right now are far more mixed use in nature.
Okay.
We're thinking about the shared economy a lot more. We're thinking about creating connected co-living spaces similar to Common and the Collective in the UK. We're creating a digital strategy for our properties, that is absolutely essential. We're creating consumer-facing brands that have historically not existed in the property industry because it's a fairly archaic industry. So we're looking at creating brands that identify with modern day consumers, that offer connected living and working experience and all the bells and whistles that come with the hospitality sector that are absent from traditional property. So we're just trying to think out of the box as much as we can in respect to what physical space looks like and how we can play a part in helping reposition a very trajectory to make it relevant in the world that we live in.
And are you possibly, in terms of selling now, going forward? I know you do hold your assets, like you do shopping malls and the residential properties that you do hold them. But are you possibly looking forward in terms of selling those assets in the near future with the tenants in place?
I think it's probably one of the worst times right now to be selling assets, simply because the market's under so much pressure.
Yep.
So I would give it 12 months to 18 months before. It's probably a great time to acquire property in the UK and here. So we're seeing a lot of deals on the table.
People are coming up with 20%, 30%, 40%. It's crazy. But the fact is that a lot of property owners who want to sell, they know that this is just short term, and this is not going to be the case.
No, I agree.
In the long term, and a lot of the real estate owners, they don't want to shift their property with that 20, 30% because obviously they're losing out as well. So it's like, yes, there is a demand for acquiring property, but then there is no demand for selling that property because the owners do not want to, part their property with such a big discount level. So are you sort of facing that as well within within the industry out there, that a lot of buyers are going out who have the power to buy, the cash buyers, they're going out and saying, okay, we'll take this off with a 30%, 40% knock-on effect?
Yeah, I think it's really deal by deal at the moment. I think people are sort of hanging tight in respect to what they're doing. And so I believe valuations will drop just simply because valuations are a function of net income. And because net income is dropping, valuations will drop.
Of course.
The listed property sector is propped up by valuations that are not sustainable. So they'll come down. It will just take a bit of time for that to happen. And then there'll be a repositioning of physical space required, which will create opportunity for entrepreneurs who are creative, who can, focus on being a little bit more nimble than the bigger property guys.
Of course.
So there'll definitely be a lot of deals on the table.
Of course. And we'll look forward to seeing those deals. I mean, the whole reason for me to do this is that to understand how the different real estate markets around the world are coping up with this whole
Yeah.
situation that we have in front of us. Um, Before we wrap up, Amari,
Yep.
what my question to you would be is I do this with each and every guest that comes on my live session is to share some positivity because right now we're going through a lot of negative uh, sentiment in the market. It be in the property market or it be in the employment market. You know, a lot of redundancies, businesses going bust, people who may want to start a business just thinking about whether to start it or not. What would be your positive advice to give them so that they can take that on board and move forward with life and not look at the past and what's going on currently?
I mean, mate, I think that there's probably no better time to start a business
Of course.
because there's only you can only go up from here.
Yeah,
So you're starting at. I always say because I went through the 2008 crash, it was probably the best time to ever start a business because you learn from the bottom how to get up.
of course.
So, and obviously the opportunity now is endless in respect to sort of the digital space. I think we've sort of become accustomed to living with less. So hopefully the society that we now live in is a lot less materialistic, which means
Yep,
that we don't need to drive fast cars and live in fancy houses to appreciate the value of a simple life. And I think that the
absolutely.
world requires more sustainable business, and society is calling for people to sustainability in all of its forms, and we have a responsibility
Of course.
as people to create sustainable businesses. And so I think that it's a great time to start a business. We'll come out of this. We've been through so much as a species for the last 2,000, 3,000 years. I think that for us right
Of
now,
course.
what we've come to realize is how important collaboration is, how important community is, how important it is to
Absolutely.
be able to have a conversation with someone. So I think that the future is positive. We just need to get through this together and we'll be fine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's
Thank you so
a
much for having
great
me.
piece of advice, for absolutely, thank you so much for coming on board. One final question that I have for you is you mentioned that you're going to come to the UK to start developing.
Yes.
Expect you in the UK market.
The moment the flights open up,
Murray?
so when I
Yep.
can get a flight over there in a month, so we're probably looking at entering the UK market in 2021 with Neighborhood as a
Wow.
vehicle.
Wow. That's pretty quick. And I look forward to working with you, Murray. It's going to be a pleasure to
Thank you, my
sell
friend.
to you, to show you around at the different development opportunities that may be, uh, that may open up the market for you in terms of real estate development in the UK. So it'll be a pleasure to work with you. But thank you so much for coming on board and sharing
Awesome.
all the facts and figures and knowledge about the real estate market in South Africa. I wish you all the best and take
Thank
care
you.
and see you soon. Thank
Awesome.
you, Murray.
Cheers,
Take care.
guys.
Bye-bye. Bye. So that was Murray James Clark, all the way from Cape Town, South Africa, who runs a property development company building shopping malls and commercial properties, residential properties in South Africa. If you want to know what he does, do check him out on his profile, Murray James Clark, and I'm sure it'll be great to know for yourself as well how the real estate market in South Africa is shaping up. I mean, I had some great knowledge in terms of how this market is going and what are they doing in terms of building that market to be sustainable for the long term. Do check it out. Thank you to James. Thank you to Murray for coming on board and sharing all that knowledge and positivity, some amazing advice in terms of how to start your business, why to start your business during this time. Thank you to all the viewers that tuned in. It's a pleasure to have you. Do tune in again at 6 o'clock where I have another live session. Stay safe, take care, and keep on being positive in life and keep on doing whatever you want to do. So thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye bye.